All right. There we go. Power plant week 2. Reading. See the canvas. Assignment. Q&A quiz. There you
How
go.
many quizzes are there?
One small one, right?
12 questions.
12 questions. So what does that mean?
Everybody gets 100.
It means you're going to get 100 or you're going to fail. I don't think you can miss one?
Yeah.
All right, don't miss. Well, you guys only missed like one this week. So, nice. All right, so what we're going to do this week is we're in the next week. So I'm going to divide it up. So this week we're going to talk about the bottom end, right? The next week we're going to talk about the top end. And that's really what we call it in the industry, is the bottom end versus the top end. The bottom end is what's left after you take the cylinders off. It's the crankcase, the crankshaft, the camshaft, the accessory case, and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to concentrate in on that. And then next week we're going to talk about the top end. Then the week after that be cooling and oil. And I told you guys that I went to, it's been several years now, but it was fun. I got to go to a Lycoming Engine School in Pennsylvania, which is a lot of fun. That's where I actually took this picture right here. So that was the classroom we were allowed to be in. And I told you about, so we're all in groups. It was, it's a much smaller class than this. Really cool people. One guy was a editors of magazine. That guy happened to be one of the flight director for NASA. He did some flight direction on, when the space shuttle. He was a cool dude. He is a cool dude. A lot of other people. They were fun to be with. An engineer who worked for, a chemical engineer, worked for Shell.
Did you shame him?
Could have. He shamed me, man. I was the dumbest guy in the room. Let's put it that way, all right? And I looked around there. Now there's one other. No. There was a lot of brain power in that room. A lot of really cool people. And then I told you so, but I was one of the few that actually had engine experience. The guy from Shell had admitted he'd never really even seen a small airplane up close. He was there because he's a chemical engineer and he's developing this new fuels, and they had a Lycoming IO540, and he had to do some work on it and just wanted to, go to school on this thing. So it was really cool. And then a lot of other people were home builds, building their RVs, thinking about buying a used engine, overhauling it. So but I was one of the only ones that really had any practical experience. So it was fun when we got into that. We did a disassemble and reassemble. The engines there, they never run. So it was just, take it apart, talk about the parts. And I think I told you that there was like this big, these guys, it's just we are, big race. See who's going to get it taken apart the first, and so everybody's taking it apart, and I got done first because they were all, and I told you they're little baggies. Whoa, this is the cylinder base nut off the number one cylinder. My little baggie here. It's the upper right one, and this is the upper left. I'm like, they're just nuts. They're all the same, So I'm just taking all my stuff and just poosh right in a pile, like I always do. And they're kind of like, dude, that are stupid. That's going to be a problem. And then, we go through the whole thing. It's like, all right, now it's time to put the engine together. And it was just me and one other guy. And, they start just going at it. And I said, all right, I'm going to sit down and organize all my hardware. And so I sit down, and that's what my hardware looked like. That's what I expect. That's what I always do when I build an engine. So I just took the time, and everybody's building their engine. They're getting their, going. They're just looking at me over there, laughing. And I told you, lining up all my little, and I always put them on the heads like that for reasons. I can see the height. So everything is lined up. So you can see right here, all of these are the same. What are those? You can't really see them well, but these are all the rocker box covers. And, these are all the 1/4 inch nuts. And these are all the cylinder base nuts. And these are all the little keepers. So everything is just perfectly lined up. Here's a little oil pressure ball. Perfectly lined up. I know where everything is. These go to that. These go to the cylinders. These go to that. And then right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the taller ones. That became a big thing. These right here. So I knew exactly what I had. And so, I want to make this story shorter. So anyway, they started building their engine, and before you know it, I kind of caught up, and then we got to the end. And the last thing you put on is the intake pipes. And the intake pipes take these 8 right here, the longest of all of them. And if you have the next one down, you can't engage any threads. And so it was at that point that they all started taking their engines back apart, looking for these 8. Because they just, And they were like, and the thing was, they would swear, no, these 8 that we have in our hand, they're the ones that came out. I'm like, yeah, I don't doubt it. The last person just pushed it in there. So anyway, I guess I say that to say this is just how I did it, and I enjoy doing it this way, and I will keep doing it that way. So.
Wait, so how do you know that those 8 went to the, how do you know what bolt size?
Okay, so, well, I just know because I've done it, but how did I learn it? So, to set stuff up like this is to make sure you have everything in the right place. Then when you're working on your engine, you have the parts book, and you're going to look at it, and it's going to, say it takes, around the crankcase is going to take a quarter 20 by, and it'll give you a dimension for here, 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 and here. You go, okay, I need 4 of those. So you grab 1, 2, 3, 4, and you go. And then it tells you to put the next one in. You go to the parts book. Well, this is the size. You got 1, 2, and so you just go back and forth from the parts book. And when you got done, you would have seen that the last thing you did, well, why do I still have 8 of these left? And you go, oh, the intake pipes. So you do the same thing, guys. When you put your engine together, look at the parts book. Now, the parts book is not approved data. All right, so this will never fly. You do something wrong. Go, why did you do that? Parts book. Okay, parts book's not really approved data, so you can't just do something because the parts book shows it. Remember who wrote the parts books. They're not us. They're not mechanics. They're like maybe technical writers or somebody who doesn't work on them, taking directions, drawing a picture, and they see things a little different. Now, they usually get it right, but they don't always. So you have to pay attention to what you're doing and look at that. So anyway, that was my stupid little story. Oh, there we go. There's me. So
Hey, you got that coat on?
I had the same coat, and everybody laughed at me. People laugh at me a lot. I don't know. And then the second day,
Who's the guy in the flight suit?
I don't remember. It's been a while. But then the second day, so I put on, they're all laughing at me. The lab coat, silly. Second day, everybody came up to me real quiet. Hey, did you get that thing around here somewhere? Can I get one? I'm like, no, I brought it from home. I wish I would have thought ahead. I just ruined my good shirt. I was working on engines. So, also, I will say that, this is how I like to line stuff up. Look, I don't know where I got this picture. It's not me, but I think I saw it on the interwebs.
What's
Alright.
written on the top of the pistons there?
The weight in grams.
I see. Are they all the same or?
136.5 or 136.1.5. So nope.
Okay.
Yep, 13. This one doesn't look like it. I think they missed something. I don't know. Anyway, the other thing that I learned here, and I'm going to show you guys, it's okay under some situations if you're doing something and the manual says to hold it in your left hand and take this in your right hand and bring the two together. Is it okay if you swap hands?
Yes.
Okay, yes, so the Lycoming manual is very clear about you take one side of the crankcase and you place it down. And then you grab the crankshaft in a certain way and you insert it into the case. I never built engines that way, or I think I did one time and I realized that is a stupid way of doing it. I will never do it again. So the way I did it is I put just like you took them apart, is how I put it back together. Put the crankshaft on the stand and I bring one case half up to it and have somebody hold it, and I bring the other case half and I bring them on and I bring the two together. And that's the way I've always done it, except for one time. So when I went to Lycoming, I know that the book says, and they don't do it that way. They lay a case down and they bring the crankshaft in and then bring the other one in. And I thought, well, just keep your mouth shut and see what you got to learn. I learned that I am right because
How do you hold the tap that's in there if you're bringing the other side straight down?
it's So you gotta put rubber bands around the outside. You gotta hold them. You have all that problem. But the one thing that makes me crazy is when I hear rods slapping against the case. It does two things. One, it could put a dent in the rod, which creates a stress point. Probably not, because the case is aluminum and it's softer. But that means that you smack the crankcase, and usually you put a little dent where the O-ring goes, which creates an oil leak. That you always have an oil leak, and pilots hate it when their engines leak. And it doesn't matter how good your engine is, if it leaks, they're going to think it's a crappy engine. So you can't do that. So anyway, I was about one of the last guys to get to that point because I was, lining. You can even see all my little nuts and bolts lined up right here. Mm-hmm. And so I was one of the last to do that. And every single group dropped the rods into the crankcase. Every single group. So when it came to me, I said, all right, absolutely not going to drop the rods on the case. I got as many people as I needed. And guess what happened? The rods dropped on the case. It is just... somebody will probably say, well, it's not impossible. saw everybody do it. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, that's why I would never build an engine this way. So anyway, that's my story. I can tell you.
It's frustrating.
Huh?
Sounds like it's frustrating for you.
No, it's just, it was funny. I learned so much. There was some great people in there. Like I said, I'm the dumbest guy in the room probably, but I'm used to that. It's not a big deal.
That was a fail story right there.
I tell you that story to tell you why you're not going to do it by the book. If you want to, I will let you. Or you can do it the way I'm going to show you. I don't have a problem. But you'll drop your rods. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what overhauling is before we get too far into things. Because that's kind of what we're doing is an overhaul, kind of. And so we got overhaul 1. We'll make that black. Steps 2, and overhaul. And I want to know what the steps are or the definition of overhaul is. Where am I going to go to find that?
Manual. Overhaul manual.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're saying I open up the Lycoming overhaul manual and it's going to tell me what the definition of an overhaul is?
Should.
AC 4315,
AC 4313, which is also called
advisory circular.
Advisory Circular, Acceptable Methods, Practices, and Techniques.
Yeah.
It's advisory circular. Is it approved data?
No.
No. So if it was, I wouldn't have to follow it, really. I could say,
FAR section 1, was it?
FAR section 1 is definitions and abbreviations. As in the power plant textbook. That'd be a textbook. So I'm talking about what is the... I have steps, but I also said what is the technical definition. Does the FAA define it, or is overhaul just a word that we've all kind of grown to accept as an industry term, meaning something like fixing it really well? Is in the FAR. Well, what are FARs?
Federal Aviation Regulation.
What is that?
It's a regulation or like basically like a rule kind of.
What kind of rule?
No,
A legally binding rule.
What do we call that? What do we call a legally binding rule?
regulation.
A regulation? Would you call it a law? Okay. So it is. It's found in the FARs. Now it's a federal law. So the word overhaul, using that word, is in fact a legal definition that I would say is a federal law. So maybe an attorney would argue with me, but I would say if you fail to do it properly, then you have violated federal law. Which FAR? 43, which is maintenance 2, A, 1, and 2. All right, so what are the steps to an overhaul? And really, this is what defines an overhaul, too, is, what are they? Come on, 309 people, you just had this, right? Disassemble, D-I-S-A-S-S-E. So if you are going to overhaul something, you are going to disassemble it, you are going to clean it, you are going to inspect it, you are going to repair, got to fix it first, repair as needed, or as necessary is the actual word, I think. As necessary. Then what? Reassemble. Am I done? This is the big one. This is, I'll put a little asterisk here because this is where you lose your license. Tested. Tested in accordance with approved standards and technical data. Technical data. This means you can't just test it to your own whim. That worked. Did you test the engine? I started it. Seemed to work. Got oil pressure and shut it down. All right, so you got to do all of those things. If you fail to test it, you have failed to overhaul it. So don't use that word. All right, what about overhaul versus rebuild? Overhaul versus rebuilt. Found in FAR 43.2 Bravo. What is the difference?
One is new standard, one is services.
Okay, one is new, one is serviceable. Which one is which? The rebuilt is the higher one. So, to quote, rebuilt is the same as above, meaning it's all of this. To rebuild something, you disassemble, clean, inspect, repair, reassemble. So I'll write that. Rebuilt. Rebuilt. Oops, rebuilt is the same as above, but tested to the same tolerance and limits as a new item, but I'll just abbreviate to new tolerances. New tolerances. So, yes. So, to read the whole thing in quotes, tested is to the same tolerance and new limits as a new item using either new parts or used parts that conform to new part tolerances. So, can you use old parts in a rebuilt?
Yeah.
Sure can, but when you measure them, they have to be measured to what limits? To new limits, which is not that crazy. All of my engines, I pretty much did everything to new limits. It's like, wow, do you have to buy a new crankshaft every time? No, an engine that is well taken care of and well loved by its owner, pull a crankshaft out after it's run a couple thousand hours, and you measure it, most of the time you were right, still within new limits if it was a well cared for engine with good oil changes and good maintenance, which is crazy. Lycoming I liked a little bit more because they go standard, then 3 under, then 6 under, then 10 under, as where Continental is, and back then, you could just polish it to 3 under. So it was real easy just to do a quick polish and go, well, it's brand new. It's in 3 limits, minus 3 limits. Continental was harder because you had to go standard, then 10 under, and had to be renitrided, which is a hard thing to do. Okay, to new tolerances. I'm just going to leave it at that. What about, I'm just going to throw this out there and ask you, what's the word I'm thinking about?
Remanufacture.
Okay, we can do that. Remanufacture. Who can remanufacture something? Only the manufacturer can use this term. Only manufacturer. Only manufacturer. Did I spell that wrong? Probably. What does remanufacture mean?
Whatever they want to.
Damn, you're on it tonight. Whatever they want it to mean. So if you send your engine off to an engine manufacturer and gets remanufactured, and they say, well, our remanufacturers are to serviceable limits, they can do that. They can do it to new. What about recondition?
Well, you usually do it to the serviceable limits.
That's overhaul. So overhaul, put this up here, serviceable.
This is where you machine it to where you can use oversized bearings and stuff like that.
Nope,
right?
that's even rebuilt. So I could rebuild something to new limits using a smaller crankshaft. So if I had a crankshaft that wore out and I wanted to grow 10 under on it and use new bearings, but I measured the crank in bearings as new limits, that's a rebuild. So what's recondition?
It's machine work. Right?
I love that word. Doesn't mean it means whatever I want it to mean. It's not mentioned in the FARs that I've ever seen, which means it's not. So recondition, that means whatever I want it to. I use that word whenever you're stuck. It's a great word to use.
I reconditioned the
Yeah,
oil.
somebody brings me a cylinder, and they didn't. I used to get this a lot of time. They would bring me just it's called a stud assembly, which means it had no valves, no springs, no nothing. It's just the base cylinder that's been completely disassembled, and they're like, hey, we want you to say, they'd always say, customer, we want you to yellow tag it. Okay, it means return to service. So would I disassemble it? There's nothing to disassemble. It's already disassembled. But I would clean it, inspect it, repair as necessary. Maybe I'd put in new guides, new seats, hone it, paint it, do everything. But did I test it? Nope. So I write right on the tag. Disassemble, clean, inspected. non-destructive tested, found no cracks, replaced intake exhaust guides, honed to size, honed the bore to standard dimensions. Cylinder was reconditioned. What does that mean?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Well, sometimes hey, this doesn't say overhaul. Very few people always said that. As long as the tag was yellow, they were happy. Nice, it's got a yellow tag. And a yellow tag in the Part 147 world, did I say that right, 145, in the repair station world, getting mixed up with the school, yellow tags were everything to the customers. I want a yellow tag. They just ask for it. I just want a yellow tag. So a yellow tag really just references the work order. So you'd write everything out really nice on the work order, and you'd issue a yellow tag that you would sign and write the work order number on. It basically said on there that this tag is in reference to work order such and such, and the work order had all the parts, all the work performed, everything. And that they'd go, whoa, yellow tag, and they just throw the invoice in the trash on the way out. Just kind of threw away the most important part. So don't do that. All right, let's see. We got rebuilt versus overhaul. Overhaul. Is it a major alteration, or repair? Question mark. Overhaul, is it a major alteration or repair? Well, it's okay if you don't know, but you know what's not okay? You got to know where to go to find this information. So where do you go to find this information? Appendix of what? Appendix isn't a book.
43.
AC 4313?
FAR 43.
FAR, which is also 14 CFR. FAR 43. Appendix A. D is the 100-hour. So Appendix A, and it tells you, hey, if something is a major alteration or repair. Let me see, what do I have here? Oops, we wanted this one. Nice cylinders. There we go. I just cut and pasted this right out of the FARs. Power plant, major alterations. The following alterations of power plant, when not listed in the engine specifications issued by the FAA, are power plant major alterations. What did that actually just mean right there?
I don't know.
Okay, it's saying that if I change something on the engine, but it still matched the type certificate data sheet, it's not a major alteration.
That was going to be my next question. If it is a major alteration, wouldn't you have to do a supplemental?
No, well, you're thinking, but sort of. Let me show you this. So if I looked up in the type certificate data sheet a particular engine and said, for this model engine, I could have either the low compression or the high compression pistons, and I happen to have the low compression engine, and I looked it up and go, whoa, it says right there in the type certificate data sheet, I can just buy the high compression pistons, put it in, and get more power. Okay, that would never happen, but it's an example of what it could say. All right. More often than not, it's something like this particular model engine has a drive pad for a fuel pump, and if it takes the fuel pump, you can use this one. And you go buy a used engine that came out of a high wing aircraft, but you have a low wing, you're like, I need to put a fuel pump on. You go, I can put a fuel pump on. So you just bolt the fuel pump on. That's more appropriate. So as long as it's there, you can do that. But what conversion of an aircraft engine from one approved model to another, that's major. So if you want an O320-A and now you want an O320-B, it's major.
And you have to do a 337, right?
Okay, so if you do a major alteration, what do you need to do major alteration? You need approved data. So what is approved data? And this is more second year class, but yeah.
Wait, but can't a FAA inspector come out and go like, well, like, you can prove it there on the spot on a field inspection?
Good luck with that. They quit doing that about 30 years ago. And most of the time they just, no, because they're liable.
Okay.
And their lawyers don't want to do that. But you need approved data in order to do that, even in IA. Anything I do as an IA, all I'm doing is looking and finding the approved data, make sure it's done with there. So what's the approved data? And you said it.
337 form?
Nope, that's the return to service.
Oh,
A supplement to the type certificate where somebody else has done it. So as an example, and I've used this many times now, the O320 150 horsepower version also came in a 160 horse version. You just change pistons. That's not in the type certificate, so you can't do it. but somebody was nice enough to spend all the money to get a supplemental type certificate, and you call up this person and you pay them the money they want, and they send you a piece of paper that says you can now go buy these pistons and put them in your engine, and it's legal. And so you do a 337 and sign it.
I thought the 337 had to be approved by the governing body.
No, just the data. An IA returns it to service with a 337. So you got it? 337 is like a logbook, but it just major alteration and repair.
Well, I thought Phil said that you had to like send it in and get
Yeah,
it
yeah,
approved
approve and
before
after
you could
make
actually
your
do
alteration.
the major alteration.
Yeah.
No, but once it's done, you send it in. He was probably talking about something different. Like if you were thinking up something that didn't have approved data, then you do it and send it in to somebody who has to approve it. But as long as there's data out there, then you can. Usually what happens, the first thing is if you call the FAA and you say, hey, I want to do this thing, well, is there a supplemental type certificate out there you can do it under or any other approved data? Yeah, but that guy wants $1,000. I say, well, don't bother us then. Go pay your money. Be cheap. No. Okay, so here's a bunch of major alterations. Major repairs. Repairs of the following parts of an engine and repairs of the following types are power plant major repairs. This doesn't talk about the type certificate because it doesn't have anything to do with it. Now you're just fixing what's broken. So number 1, separation or disassembly of a crankcase. Uh-oh. Did you guys mess up? Did you do a major alteration repair?
It's not equipped with an intercooler.
Always got to read the rest. Or crankshaft of a reciprocating engine equipped with an integral supercharger.
No.
Do you have a supercharger on your engine? Happen to notice? Or separation, disassembly of a crankcase, crankshaft or recip engine equipped with a other than spur type propeller reduction gear. Spur type means one gear on another gear. 2 gears, they mesh together. If you got 2 gears meshed together like a GO 300, you're good. You take apart the planetary and sun gears like on some radial engines, that's some major repair. And really all they're doing is making sure that an IA shows up, looks over the work, and signs it. So, special repairs to structural engine parts by welding, plating, metallizing, or other methods. So there you go. There's your major.
Would re-nitrating a crank fall under that?
You would think so. No. Let me go back to this. Okay. Welding. So welding is welding. Plating. Nitriding is not plating.
Uh-huh.
Metallizing, that would be adding metal, or other methods.
That's very broad.
It's very broad. Generally speaking, the reason why I was like, good question. The places that do that kind of work are certified repair stations anyway, authorized to do it. And so they don't have to do a 337, just to sign the work order. So just
that's the loophole per se.
repairs, yeah. Yeah, we didn't have to do 337. We always did, but all right, we're back to here. Overall major repair. Well, so Appendix A has, let me see. So the answer is overhaul. Major alteration or repair? No, unless what? The engine has what?
Supplement.
An internal supercharger.
Or more than a spur gear in reduction gear?
Yep. Charger or reduction gear. That is not spur type. Therefore, a major overhaul is a minor repair. Well, I hate to write it. Otherwise, we'll do that. Otherwise, a major overhaul is a minor repair.
Why is it called a major overhaul? Why isn't it just a overhaul?
I don't know. Why is it called a major overhaul, not just overhaul? Don't really know that one.
We gotta bump it up, make it sound good.
So, yeah, because we charge a lot. All right, let's talk about some abbreviations. So every year I have to go to an IA renewal, and it seems like every year the same, and I have to go to 8 hours of training, and so every year it seems like the same person gets up and talks about how abbreviations are bad. Don't use abbreviations. From an attorney standpoint, I can see that, and it makes perfect sense. But then the person always goes into this list of abbreviations that have no meaning. And let me tell you something. You want to hear a bunch of grumpy old men in plaid shirts go off, start telling them that they can't use abbreviations. I don't know what it is, but they get really grumpy. So, huh? Yeah, it's like, this means nothing. Like, I've been using that for 53 years, and it means, but I'm just going to tell you abbreviations, and these you're going to see all the time, so you have to know what they mean. SMOH. Huh?
Is a big one IAW?
Oh, IAW, yeah. What does that mean? And they have all these, he makes up these crazy things, and so. SMOH. Since major overhaul. When you are doing a log entry, especially on an annual inspection, it's something you always have to carry forward. How many hours has it been since major overhaul? So you want to keep track of that. And you also want to keep track of, well, I should just make this one. Might as well do that. TT. Total. See? And what did you say? That's the guy's point. So to you, it may be tack time to you, but it's total time to me. But industry standard, they call it total time. So, and guess how we would tack time? We write tack time. I don't know. Well, so in a logbook entry, up at the top, I usually do, I'll just do this on the side. So you'd have like date, tack, Hobbs, SMOH, and total time. And now I'd fill in all those numbers. So we know what date is. The tack is the what? Well, you said it.
Yeah.
These are times. Tack is from the tachometer. The tachometer has like a odometer on it. It reads off hours. What's a Hobbs?
It's only when the engine's at.
Okay, Hobbs is an hour meter. So I've got 2 hour meters in the plane. Well, why would there be a discrepancy? The easiest way to explain it is this. If you own an airplane and you rent it to somebody, you charge them Hobbs time. If you're an owner of an airplane and you're trying to figure out how many hours are on your engine, use the tack time. Okay? Because as an owner, I want the lowest amount of time, but I'm going to rent it to you, I want the highest amount. So think of it this way. So the Hobbs usually works off of, well, if you're going to rent it, it works off just the master switch. Turn on the master switch and it starts rolling. But but normally they work off the oil pressure. So as soon as the engine starts, it gets oil pressure, this thing starts going. A tack doesn't really read hours until you get up near, I think it's calibrated to read about 75% of the RPM is where it reads normal hours. So you can idle it all day and you're really not going to move that tack very much, but the Hobbs is going to go. So, and SMOH is how much time since major, and TT is in my total time of the engine. I want to carry that forward because, but then you get into weird stuff like STOH. I look out for an engine that says STOH. Yep. Since top overhaul. See, now this is something I don't think you're going to find it in abbreviations and definitions in FAR1. But just see, when you see it out in the field, you know it since top overhaul. And I see something that, that's the cylinders. So, you're looking for a plane. I was for a while, and I'm looking at all these planes. It's like, hey, this engine only has 1,000 hours since major overhaul and 500 since a top overhaul. Okay, wait a minute. Well, how come that engine only went 500 hours before the cylinders went crap? So, but that's what since top overhaul. Of course, there's so many more. We could get into SPOH, since prop overhaul. Guys, think of any other ones you see out there?
Prop hit the ground.
Yes, since prop hit the ground. No, I haven't seen that one. Oh, this is a good one. Nothing freaks me out more than that one.
Oh,
All right.
Inspect, repair as needed. Yeah, engine just had an eye ran in. Why? Why? Yeah, why? So first say, why? One of two things. It hit something or it sat for infinity. So, all right. Is it break time for you?
Inspect, repair as needed.